Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome to our, we could probably call this roundtable discussion of the events leading into the Strongest Man on Earth at the Shaw Classic. And I have some very knowledgeable gentlemen joining me today. I'm really happy about this. So we've got Jerry Pritchett, we've got Lauren Chalet, and Terry Hollins. All of these men have a ton of knowledge about events, and I thought it'd be a lot of fun to kind of get together and break this down going into this contest, because man, it is going to be wild. So I'm just, in this first video, I'm just going to quickly go through the athletes, not talk about them, but just so everybody knows the lineup. So we got Hafthor Bjornsson, Mitch Hooper, Tom Stoltman, Evan Singleton, Matt Ragg, Trey Mitchell, Bobby Thompson, Alexei Novikov, Avar Schmoxelis, Pavlo Kordiaka, Maxime Boudreau, Thomas Evans, Lucas Hatton, Tristan Hoth, Wes Derwinski, and Austin Andrade. So quite a lineup there, guys. And the first event out of the gate is going to be the max deadlift, doing it raw, first and foremost, regular straps. And then the interesting part of this event, which I'm actually really excited about, is we're going to do it in a true round system. So the guys are going to call their weights. They get to pick their own weights, and then it will be done in rounds. So each round will go lightest to heaviest, and then we'll reset the bar. Start the second round, the guys will call their second weight and then run it exactly like that. So instead of, and we can talk more about this, instead of the guys that are going to lift the lightest weights having to potentially follow themselves in a rising bar format, or the strongest lifters having to follow themselves at the end and not knowing when they're going to start lifting and this type of thing, everybody, I'm hoping, can plan their warm-ups adequately, number one, and then also from a strategy and entertainment standpoint, everybody's going to be able to put up their best numbers and also score the max amount of points. So whoever wants to jump in and say about the
is it just 3 rounds, Brian?
It is 3, yep. And then on the third round, they can make one positive increase in their weight. So the first 2 rounds are set, and then as soon as they choose their weight for the third round, they can make one increase based on strategy if they want to try to pick up points or something like that.
I think this is the advantage of doing it like the way you are, is obviously with a rising bar, like you said, you sometimes get those points where you literally get like a minute's rest between lifts. So I think this is the best way to get the best out of the athletes. At the end of the day, we want to see the biggest numbers lifted. So doing it this way, I think you're going to get the best performances out of all the guys.
I think you get a couple of advantages with this as well, because you end up not having so many tied points where people can select their numbers. Whereas if the numbers are set and they're quite big jumps in between, you often end up with a number of guys on the same lift. So this is kind of perfect to really separate them out. It's an amazing start to the competition. I think we're all excited to see a raw deadlift as well. Just, I know all 4 of you, or all 4 of us, appreciate a raw deadlift. It's a little bit different to equipped deadlifting. And yeah, what a perfect way to start the competition.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Loz. I think going down the raw route, obviously, you know, I've lifted in a suit myself. I've lifted out of a suit. I do think that some people are getting a lot more of an advantage out of a suit than others are. So this is the fairest way of doing it. Everyone's on the same playing field. There's no advantage to having a better suit or a slightly better fitting suit. It just works that, yeah, we get the strongest guy lifting the biggest number.
You know what I thought was interesting too is we actually did a questionnaire with the guys. You know, after they got invited, we had them fill out a questionnaire, and I was actually really shocked at how many of them responded and said how excited they were for no suits. I kind of thought there would be a little bit of a mixed response. Like, hey, I really prefer suits, but it was pretty much across the board. I don't know if there's anybody that said, no, I think this should be done with suits and, you know, whatever. Everybody is like, hey, I've either been waiting for this or I'm excited about this. I think it's going to show, you know, the strongest deadlifter just point blank, right? Like point blank, who's going to be the best deadlifter. And, you know, going into it, you know, I know for me, and Jerry could jump in for sure. Like at the Arnold, for example, they had the argument with the rising bar that it's too hard for the crowd or people to follow if they reset the bar each round. And so, you know, what you got, and I know for me, this was very hard, is if you open with a bigger number, you're back there and it's like you kind of have to warm up to see how you're feeling to call your opener. And then you sit for a long time before you actually come out, because you've got the guys taking their first attempts and then potentially taking their second attempts. And some of them even their third attempt, and they're already done competing before you even get to do your first lift. So, you know, I know for me with this way, if the stronger athletes, well, and the guys that aren't going to pull as much, they know when they're going to lift, right? So there's an order that'll be followed each round, and then they'll know, hey, I'm 5 out for sure, not, hey, somebody's going to call a wait in between and I've got to wait. And, you know, it adds a lot of stress when you do that as a lifter. And, you know, I know from a crowd perspective, I truly believe people are smart enough, number one, and we've got fans that are very serious about this. So they're going to understand, hey, we're going to start it with a round and everybody's going to put on their best performance that way, you know, instead of.
I think what you said about the crowd, I think the Shore Strength, the Shore Classic, Strongest Man on Earth crowd they're very knowledgeable, like spectators. They all know what they're talking about. They're not armchair fans. They're not people that just watch it on TV just for a bit of fun. They really know their stuff. So I think the numbers mean something to them, which I think, you know, to get the most out of the athletes is really important. But also, it can affect the overall score at the end of it. If someone misses a lift because they've had to rush it, they might lose 2 or 3 points because of that, which can obviously affect the overall standing. We want to get the best out of all the athletes. We want to see the best out of the athletes. All of us do. And the crowd, obviously, like you said, they're very knowledgeable. So the numbers do mean something to them.
Yeah. This is absolutely format to see the best results and numbers. I personally would have killed for this format years ago, where I could call my own weights, not have preset weights for one. And like Brian was just saying about, you know, where the Arnold used to do it, it was really hard to pace your warm-ups, you know, when you're having one of the biggest openers to wait, because there was no way to pace, you know, how many guys were going to go and keep following themselves. Because a lot of times, you know, Brian and I would walk out there for our openers, half the field was done usually, or more. Like we want to be a handful of guys left, so we're in the back. Like, well, how much more warm up do you do? And you're kind of having to guess at that. Where this is perfect, where you got a set system. Each round is the same. You know, obviously the third round will start changing a little bit. Guys start maybe dropping and, you know, missing weights, but it's gonna be much better to pace as an athlete, cause so you can make it much more competitive. You're gonna see the best, you know, results, biggest numbers. You're gonna see the, you know, some of your top deadlifts. You know, like what we can do is based on what we saw at the Arnold, but I think we're gonna see much better numbers here with this kind of system.
Well, look, I hope that happens. I mean, I know the guys are really excited about it, and you know, the set jumps. You know, I remember back in 2016, I had a call, you know, with Colin and Darren going into that contest. You know, and Jerry, you're super familiar with that as well. But I really wanted, I was on a call, and I really wanted to have a jump between 1,050 and 1,070, like somewhere in that range, because that's what I felt like I was capable of pulling. And I really wanted to put up my best number. I was like, look, I don't want to go after the 500 kilos, but if I could pull that, and I would have pulled it raw just because that's what I like to do. But if I could have pulled that deadlift, like let's just say 1,060 raw, 1,070 raw, I was really excited about that. And that's where I felt like my training was at that point. And they said, no, we're jumping from the 1,025, which you pulled, Jerry, and then jump it right to the 500 kilos. And you know, that was, to be fair, a pretty heated discussion that happened on the phone between me and them, because I was like, why am I going to fly all the way over there when I can't put up my best number? You know, like granted, it's their rules, their contest. They wanted to run it that way, and you know, it worked out. But ironically enough, Jerry, I think that's the raw deadlift. You in that contest is the number we're chasing here with 1,025.
Yeah,
that's 465. Is that right?
Yeah.
Kilos. So I think that's, I mean, unless you guys know of a bigger raw deadlift done in a contest, I think that's the number we're probably chasing to beat is kind of what I'm thinking.
I 100% agree with you. I hated that one being the numbers were already called for us, because I felt the same way. I felt that I figured I was good for a 1050 to 1070 range. I could have pulled that, and the way 25 went, I would have pulled that easily.
That was I mean, honestly, man, that was a beautiful deadlift. Yeah.
That was incredible that day. I think it's difficult because you get organizers that are just focused on the record, which is fine. It's good, you know. We've got some massive deadlifts going on this year, but as a former strongman and as a fan, I love seeing a battle with the best guys on that day, all using the same equipment. And we've all been in that situation where, you know, it's easy to post up videos during your training cycle and stuff like that, but you want to see who's the best on the day, and you want the opportunity to do your best. And like you guys have said there, you don't always have that opportunity if there's a 100-pound jump between lifts. You want to have the numbers that you've got going into your head. It's not always about winning the deadlift for every single athlete. For some of the guys, they want to go and smash a PB and do the biggest number that they can, or get into a battle of thinking, right, I can't beat the first and second guy, but if I can get third place, that's going to give me great points for the whole competition. And that's where the strategy is going to come in. You know, you're going to have guys like Hafthor Bjornsson, incredible deadlifter. He's going to want to win this. But there's other areas of this competition, especially being an 8-event competition, where athletes are thinking, right, if I can get top 5 in this, is going to put me in a great position for the overall. Whereas if they are forced to sort of do the same number as everyone else and then suddenly tie with 5 different athletes, their competition could be over.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, like that Hafthor would be at the top of the, you know, top of the competitor list, most likely. A lot of the guys have even said that they're chasing him, and almost in a way going for second place. I mean, is that something that you guys agree with, or do you think within this list, do you think there's some guys that could push him a little bit?
I think looking at outside right now, you know, Hafthor is definitely the favorite after looking at the Arnold. When he pulled there, he pulled 1,000 very comfortably. You know, but I do think there's, you know, some guys that will push him a little bit. You know, whether they got enough to beat him, I don't know. But I don't think he'd be the only 1,000-pound pull right now. Being first event with this kind of setup, you know, Mitch is looking very strong on deadlift. Evan's deadlift's come up a long ways. Rag, I think, I mean, it might have been in a soup. I think Rag has pulled 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, I think it was a 460 pull he put up in a suit. Like 1,015, somewhere in that range.
You know, I think he's going to have some. You know, it's not going to make it easy for him. You know, and I think eventually he still could come out on top because I think he's got more in the tank if he needs it. But it's not going to be easy for him. I don't think it's going to be as easy as it was at the Arnold. You know.
I mean, the question is, I mean, I think 4 is obviously the favourite. The question is, how much is he actually capable of? You know, he's not really been pushed yet since he's been back. At the Arnolds, he wasn't pushed that much. But I think that this lineup is a lot stronger through the whole sort of competitor list, that he probably will be pushed a little bit more. So not only, obviously, you know, will we get some big numbers lifted, but we'll also see 4 tested and see what he's actually capable of right now, which is, I think, a question we all want answered.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, looking at, I was just trying to pull up some stuff on the guys, but, you know, Mitch Hooper, in all fairness, I think he might have the second big, I mean, granted it was in a suit, but still, like he's pulled a big deadlift in a suit, and he's very capable of some big numbers. Bobby Thompson is a name too that, you know, everybody seems to somehow forget, like when it comes to deadlift, but, you know, he made that call at the Arnold, and, you know, maybe took some criticism about not, you know, I think he got second with his opening lift, you know, so have to push more. How much more was there? You know, could he go over that 1,000-pound barrier? You know, and I'm sure that's going to kind of be a talking point going into this, because, you know, there's a number of these guys have pulled over 1,000 with a suit, right?
Yeah.
But how many guys could pull 1,000 raw? You know, and I think there's a handful of them, to be fair, that could potentially.
Yeah, I mean, all the ones we mentioned, and then you've got people like Austin Andrade, great deadlifter. If I remember correctly, when I saw him over in the UK in Wales, I don't think he wore a suit for his deadlift, and he went.
He pulled 430 kilos, and that was without a suit.
Yeah, so he's strong. I mean, that, you know, obviously you would have thought that he would have improved since then. I mean, there's a very good chance he's going to be around that sort of 1,000-pound mark without a suit, and I'm still waiting for Tom really sort of come to the table with his deadlift. I know he's capable of a lot. His deadlift looks strong at world strongest man. I think we could see a big number from Tom as well.
Yeah, I think you might result from Tom that he did at the Arnold. I don't know if the elephant bar suits him. As I think a regular deadlift bar, he probably get more. And then that was my what bar are you using, Brian?
It'll be a Rogue deadlift bar.
Cool.
So I mean, I think Tom is a question. I put him down on my notes. It's like with those names, you just even in Austin, right? Like if some of these guys step up and pull big numbers, it's actually going to put quite a bit of pressure on Tom because he's gonna want to stay in that top, I mean, probably top 5, I mean, throughout this contest, because you want to get started on a good foot and not dig yourself too much of a hole. But I think that, mid 900 range, like that maybe 930 to 970, those type of numbers, so kind of the, that, what would that be, like a 420, 425 up to like that 440 type of kilo range. Like that's where the guys are. I think a number of them are stacked up in that range, and it's who can play the strategy game and then come out on top, and so what do you open with, right? Because if you open, you want to get in a somewhat of a driver's seat position with your opener if you can, right? Because then in the second round, I always like to say with this type of event where you're actually calling your weights, it's very much like a game of chess, but you just need to be strong enough to make the moves, right? So it's like, I know what I need to do. It's but if you open too heavy and that first lift comes out of the gate and it doesn't fly up off the floor, now in your head, you're playing the game of like, well, how much is in the tank? Oh crap. And somebody open a touch lighter, they jump over you, so it's very fascinating, like, what you call at the beginning and then the strategy throughout. I don't think a lot of people realize how much strategy there really is on that side.
There's a ton of strategy, no matter if you're a top deadlifter going into it, because you're expected to pull a big number, which there's some strategy, like you're saying, on what warm up, your first attempt, your second, on to get that number, to make sure you come out on top. And then if you're going to be a mid-range, well, you got to get as many points as you can. So that's going to be really watching some of the other guys that you're going to be close to. So, a lot of those guys that, might be that over 850 to 950 range, that's going to be a lot of strategy where I land, because I got to make sure I get at least 5 pounds on him, or, so that's going to come in somewhat on the order on how you draw too.
Yeah.
Be able to watch guys. And then, even if you're not, one of the best deadlifters, you got to get salvage points. So if this is a bad event for you, you got to get what you can, and hopefully you can pick off a couple guys to get some points, so there's strategy all the way through it. No matter if you're looking like, oh, I got this one, you don't just have a one. There's some good guys there. Like Hofstor, he's got to be smart on his attempts, his warm-ups, everything, watching guys that potentially could get close to him, because he should win this event. So he needs to make sure he comes out top on it.
It's interesting when you say that, because every athlete has strengths and weaknesses. I mean, looking at all 4 of us, we're all pretty good deadlifters, but you two, Jerry and Brian, particularly at the Arnolds and places like that, you guys were going there to win the deadlift, So was your strategy, I'm just going to win it, or were you thinking about the whole competition? Because for me, I'd be thinking, I've got to stay as close to you guys as possible and hope that I put the pressure on you to make a mistake. Whereas you guys are thinking, I need to win this one. And there's going to be those battles going on where I believe Thor is the favorite to win the deadlift. Looking at what people are doing right now, I think it's fair to say he's the favorite, but there are some fantastic deadlifters. And we've just been talking about, 7 or 8 guys that are all going to be really close to each other. Now, the difference between 7 or 8 points is huge in the overall. So getting these numbers right is going to be so important that, trying to put that pressure on the bigger deadlifts to hope they make a mistake. And also to think about the whole contest, because this contest is about the whole contest in my eyes. It's not about breaking a record on the deadlift. You want to be placing, this has become one of the biggest competitions of the year. Thor's never won this competition. He'll want to win it. You know, Mitch Hooper was second last year. He's going to want to win it. Tom Stoltman's going to want to win. He's going to want to prove that World's Strongest Man isn't just the only comp that he can win. There's so many, you know, talking points for us to build up. But the deadlift, it's not about who gets a record in this. It's about who wins. And that is the fun part as an athlete. When I see a competition and it's a battle, yourself, Jerry, and JF Caron on the elephant bar a few years ago, that battle was exciting to watch. And that's what I want to see from this. Who's not just strong, but who's the smartest guy out there as well, and who's going to be good overall.
Well, it's a great point, Laws, because, you know, a lot of times, especially the Arnold, when, you know, they put extra money on, there's a record, you know, for the top lift or whatever. And I was guilty myself, not only just record, I wanted the biggest deadlift, you know, so sometimes, you know, and when you go after big weights, it doesn't come without a risk too, you know, so you really need to be smart and think about the whole show. But there is a little bit in the moment that I want the biggest lift, and sometimes that can come to bite you, and especially in a show like this where there's so many heavy events. If you pick up something in that first event, your weekend's done. You know, if you tweak a hamstring or anything, you know, so there's so much strategy on playing it, you know, and really knowing your body and what you're capable of is going to be huge going into this, you know, because you want your biggest result, but you want to be safe too. And you still got to get through the rest of the show healthy and strong. So it's going to be really exciting to watch these guys navigate this.
I think Lawrence, that's a very interesting question, right? Strategy of the whole show versus that event. And, you know, I would say that, like, for me, I would look at probably 2019 at the Arnold as what Jerry just said, risk reward, right? So I thought I made the perfect calls on the elephant bar there. So as you know, Hawthorne, myself, you know, he lifted that 1046, but I was ahead in the second round. So I called the 1051 and went for the 1051, tore the hamstring, you know, but it's kind of like, looking back, do you go for the 1051? Do you leave it? Because I was healthy, then I would have been healthy for the rest of the contest, and I still would have ended up in second place, you know, in the deadlift. So it's like, was it worth fighting for that 1 point? You know, but then let's just say the lift goes, all right, cool. Now I pulled the 1051. I'm on top of the world. My confidence is through the roof. Everything's great, right? So it's always that risk reward, and especially with the opening event, there's going to be a lot of adrenaline. These guys are all going to be primed, ready to rock and roll, and getting out in front of that crowd, it's controlling that. But also, you know, somebody like a Hawthorne, for example, you know, and other events we'll talk about here, is that 1 point going to come to bite you, right? Like, I always thought to myself too on the back end, because there was very close battles I had that came down to half a point, you know, and if you feel good and you could pick that point up early, it always, like, this is any sport, I feel like it comes down to like the last minute of the game or whatever, like, oh, you could have done this, but then at the beginning of the game, if you could have just made another shot, or you could have picked up a half point or something, right? Like, I always tried to think of it that way, because those half points are, you know, a tie, for example, could come back to really get you later on. So super fascinating, guys. Like, this one's going to be fireworks, I think, to start the contest off, and I'm very, very excited to see the strategy, number one, and then see who performs. So yeah, I think it's going to be good.
Really start off the weekend. I mean, all the events are going to be exciting to watch, but to start off this one with a max deadlift with this format, it's going to be cool, and the crowd's going to love it. I think the athletes are going to love it, because it's going to make it very competitive, you know, and I got to be strong, got to be smart for this one too, to navigate this.
Love it.